I am yours, I am yours, I am yours. Send me, Lord. I am yours, I am yours, I am yours.
Welcome to the Gospel-Centered Pro-Life Podcast, a podcast designed to equip, encourage, and challenge you in pro-life ministry, and always with a focus on the gospel. Stay tuned.
I felt your passion, I've touched your heart.
Use me, Lord, use me, Lord.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Gospel-Centered Pro-Life Podcast. I'm here with Daniel Parks. Daniel is in a new place. He is in the land of golden opportunity, right? You're in California.
Yeah, or the land of fruits and nuts, they say.
Well, that too.
Yep.
And I'm in North Carolina, so we're recording remotely from each other.
Yes, we are.
But we do intend to continue with our podcast. Daniel will be out there for what, three months at this point
till
is
the
what
end of
the
November.
gig is. Okay. Yeah. And you are out there working with our national missionaries out
trying to
in
just
California.
equip and encourage those who are out here who are Love Life missionaries. They're doing the work. I want to support them and encourage them. Some of these people, all of these people are brand new to this ministry, and there's a lot of work to be done here. And just to let you guys know, my voice is terrible. I'm dealing with some allergy stuff. And I'd hoped coming out to California would change that, but apparently not. It seems like it might be a little worse. But by God's grace, we'll make it through this. And, we really feel like these podcasts are important. We get a lot of feedback from people, from our missionaries. They're encouraged. We touch on subjects that seem to be so timely. Like we did our podcast about what to do when an ambulance shows up. And I get an email like the next day from one of the local volunteers here in Riverside. Right. It was like an ambulance just showed up yesterday, and what you shared was really helpful. Also, I got an email from somebody I think in Florida who had the same thing around the same time, and just actually had an interaction with a counselor or a missionary that's dealing with a woman that's going through miscarriage. And we just put out that podcast last week.
Exactly. That happened to me also this past week. One of the missionaries said she was going through that, and I was able to point them to that podcast. So it is amazing how God kind of nudges us to do a subject, and sometimes you all nudge us, and that's how we decide what to do a podcast about. That's the way this one actually came about.
That, struggling through with my voice, and you guys struggling through to listen to my voice, as terrible as it sounds, it's worth it. It's worth it to us. Yeah. And even though through many dangers, toils, and snares, we record this podcast, we think it's worth it. So, because you guys that are listening, you're worth it. And the gospel going forth is worth it. And babies being saved, moms' lives being impacted, it's worth it, guys. So we want to encourage you, and we hope this blessing or this episode will be a blessing to you guys.
Right. Yeah, and this episode, like so many of them, came about because someone mentioned a situation where a service provider had come up to the abortion center, and they were curious about, what do you do? What do you say? And we're always so careful to train our volunteers that keep your focus. Your ministry is the unborn child, and that mama, because she has a life or death decision to make. Yeah. And one way or another, by the end of the day, that child's either going to be alive or dead based on that mother's decision. So that's our ministry focus. But that doesn't mean that we ignore that are in the vicinity, or even something that you would think maybe would be not as useful to interact with, such as the service providers. And by that, I don't mean the abortion workers, but the DoorDash people, or the person delivering FedEx, or quite often the Uber drivers, which we see frequently, Uber and taxi drivers. So we see them all the time. And the way that that we wanted to talk about this podcast is telling some stories. Stories are so powerful. And we've developed just a smattering of these are true stories of things that have happened mostly within the past year.
Yeah.
Some of them very recently. One of them happened just last week or the week before, of where a service provider and our interactions with them led to a baby being saved. And
Yeah.
that is not infrequent.
Yeah.
And
It's pretty
that's
amazing
kind of
what the Lord does in these situations.
yeah. Yeah. So the very first point is, of course, stay focused on your mission field. If you see a mom going in, she is your focus.
Yeah,
Now, if it's
absolutely.
an Uber or a taxi driver coming in, they're often transporting a mom. So your interaction with them is going to be heard by the mother, and that is still keeping your ministry focused. But be careful about being so sidetracked, like thinking, oh, I got to talk to every service person that comes in, that maybe you're missing moms. That would not be appropriate.
Yeah.
But the one that happened recently, I was not a part of this story. I was actually in the office when the counselor came in and told me about this story. But a taxi driver with a Hispanic couple in the back seat was driving slowly down the street. The driver stopped. It was a taxi driver, and he stopped. I think it was a he. And the counselor that he stopped for was actually one of our brand new counselors. And she is really only on the sidewalk a few weeks. And I'm sure she didn't feel like she knew what to say. I remember what it was like when I was brand new like that. But the first thing she said, and I think you'll notice this trend in all of the stories, is, did you know that this is an abortion center?
Yeah. Yeah. That's something we have to keep in mind, because these Uber drivers quite often, like probably 99.9% of the time, have no clue. They're just,
Right.
they got a message on their phone. I don't know exactly how Uber works, except for it's an app and all of that. And they get a notification somebody wants to be picked up. And then they want to be picked up here and they want to be taken there. It doesn't tell them they want to be taken to the abortion clinic,
Right. And it doesn't
that
say
mom is probably not going to share that information either, when she gets into the Uber
That's
car.
right. That's right. They sometimes do tell me they know they're at a clinic, that they're coming to a preferred women's health center, but that hardly says abortion anywhere on it. And they are, I would say, most of the time shocked. Most of the time they are shocked. No, I didn't know that. So that was the first thing that this just very intuitive counselor, she did the exact right thing, asked the exact correct first question. Did you know this is an abortion center?
Yeah.
And the driver said he did not. And he instantly glanced in his rearview mirror at the Hispanic couple. Now, they did not speak any English, from what I understand. And he was the Uber driver because he was also Hispanic. He spoke Spanish. And so a lot of what transpired, we don't know what he said, because he's speaking in Spanish to the couple. But he's clearly distraught as he looks in the rearview mirror, and the couple in the back kind of squirm. And he asks them in Spanish if they knew that they were going to an abortion center. And my guess is what transpired was that, yes, obviously they knew.
Yeah.
And there was an argument that ensues between the taxi driver and the couple in the back seat. And our very smart counselor handed them the literature, and also, I believe, got Spanish literature into their hands, to the taxi driver, who instantly gave it to the couple. And she explains to the taxi driver, who is bilingual, he was able to speak English. She explained, well, this is an abortion center. And do you believe in God? The number 2 question that I think would be come on the tails of that first question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it turns out he did. And as soon as someone says yes, the door is wide open for you to say, well, your fare is being paid in part by someone, or it's being paid by someone who is here to kill their baby.
Yeah.
And when you take business that brings you into a place where babies are being murdered, then you're complicit. And I don't know if she said exactly those words. Again, I wasn't there, but something along those lines, saying
Yeah.
you don't want to be pulling into this
Yeah.
place.
And with that, I think we have to be careful not to come across as like, we're condemning them. We're kind of lumping them in with the mom that's there to kill her baby, or with the abortion clinic. I mean,
Right.
they're not working for the abortion clinic.
Yeah.
So I think there's a balance there. Again, these people don't know that they're bringing someone to an abortion clinic.
Yeah.
But the fact is, they are bringing someone to an abortion clinic, right? I mean, you can think of a few analogies. If you're in Nazi Germany and somebody's telling you to drive a truck, and you don't realize you got Jews in the back of it, and you're taking them to a Nazi death camp. You don't know what you don't know, and you're not guilty until you find out, right? And you realize halfway down the road there's some Jews in the back, and you've got a choice to make. Are you going to keep driving the truck to the destination, or are you going to stop and say, I'm not going to be a part of this?
That's right.
So I think that's a good analogy maybe for this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we have to be careful. Like, again, these people don't know, so we're not going to condemn them for something they just don't know, but we are going to inform them so that they do know. And then again, they've got a choice to make in that moment.
Yeah. And the counselor went on to share how we were going to be able to help the couple in the back seat. And she asked the taxi driver to translate, which he did. So she listed the resources. She talked about God. She talked about the development of the baby. And the driver said, I'm not going to drive him in there. He refused. He said, I will not. I won't do it. Now, not all of them do that. Most of them don't do that, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But this man took a stand. He was not. And the couple in the back kind of threw up their hands and said, fine, take us back to the hotel and we'll call you all to find out how you can help us. So it was grudging, apparently, a little bit angry, but they did. The driver took them back to the hotel. He left. I don't know if they ever called our Spanish translator or not, but for sure that day, that baby's life was reprieved because of the courageous stand of the taxi driver. And he wouldn't have made that stand alone. He wouldn't have made it if we hadn't been there.
Picture, though, just so people understand, like, this is happening within like 50 feet of the abortion clinic.
That's right.
So these people could have gotten out of the car and walked into the abortion clinic.
They could have.
Like, they were captive in the car. It's not like, they were miles away from the abortion clinic. They could have just gotten out. And I've seen that happen before. I've seen taxi drivers come. They refused to pull into the abortion clinic because, they've stopped. And when they found out they were not going to be complicit in this whole thing, they can't do anything. They can't lock the doors and drive the people back to their, where they picked them up at. So, I've seen people get out of the Uber or get out of the taxi and just walk into the abortion clinic. At that point, I think, the Uber driver, the taxi driver has done all that they can do.
Mm-hmm.
In this situation, it seems to me, as we say, these people they're praying for a sign. It seems to me these people took the interaction with the taxi driver, or it was an Uber driver. Was it an Uber driver?
This one was a taxi driver, I'm pretty sure.
They sort of took that interaction as a sign from the Lord. That's right. Because again, if they really wanted to have the abortion, they could have gotten out of the taxi and went into the abortion clinic.
They could have. And I think it illustrates another really important point, that when we take a stand for righteousness, people notice, and it can sometimes breathe courage into hearts that are wavering.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of what happened. This taxi driver was adamant. He wasn't going to drive in there. What they were about to do was wrong. And he was not going to back down from what he knew was right. So I think that's an encouragement for all of us, that we need to stand firm on what we know is true and right, and what God would have us do. He was a hero.
Speaking of encouragement, the guy was a hero, absolutely. Speaking of the word encouragement, you guys have heard me in the past talk about this. To encourage someone is to put courage into them. And that's what we're doing in these situations. Like we're speaking to these service people, these Uber drivers, especially like Uber drivers, taxi drivers, and we're speaking courage into them and saying, you can do this. You can take a stand for life. You can speak to them. You can hand them this literature. Because, oftentimes when they do stop, it's not that they're rolling down the back window for us to talk to the person they have in the back, right? They're rolling down their window. So we've really got to speak to them and interact with them and encourage them, put courage into them that you can speak to the people that you have in the back of your car. You can give them this literature. So please do that. And so we're trying to put courage into them.
Yeah, exactly. So the second situation was similar. It was an Uber driver this time. And I think it's a really important little story to tell because he had already dropped the person off. Now, when he stopped for me, I think again, it might have been a woman. I think it was a man, but he dropped off a worker, and the worker went in, and I called out to the worker. The worker went in, and my tendency even is get back to my mission and ignore the person coming out. He's already dropped the worker. What good is it going to do he's just an Uber driver.
Yeah.
He may never come here again, but I didn't. That time I didn't. Sometimes I have. That time I didn't. He pulled over, stopped for me, and I started off with the same thing. Did you know this is an abortion center? And I think he might have known. I think he had dropped this worker at other times. And I talked about what happens in an abortion center. And then I handed him the information and I said, listen, you may know someone that is considering an abortion, or maybe you don't even know right now, but maybe if you hang on to this, I guarantee you someone's going to happen along in your life that is in an unplanned pregnancy, considering an abortion. And I want you to know we help them. We help them with resources and no matter what situation they face, and with a mentorship program. We even do baby showers that provide 2 full years of what that child will need. I just would encourage you to take this information, and if you know someone that's struggling, would you tell her we'll help them? That's my name and my number on the back. So he took the information and said thank you and left. And that afternoon, I was home from the abortion center and I got a call from a woman who said, is this Vicky? Yes. Well, an Uber driver is a friend of mine, and he just gave me a pamphlet that he got from you today. And he said that you all help women who are struggling in unplanned pregnancies and thinking about abortion.
Wow.
And that's my story. Can you tell me what you could do, how you could help? And so I did. And one thing led to another. I shared the gospel. She had fallen away from God, but she knew it. And like so many women, when she made the decision to abort, it felt like God had abandoned her, when in reality, of course, she had abandoned God. But she recommitted her life to the Lord. She said she was not going to abort. She wanted the mentor. And so, praise God for that amazing result of the obedience of that Uber driver. But the story didn't end there. She got involved with a mentor. She found out just how much help the mentorship program is. And her cousin was also in an unplanned pregnancy. She told her cousin about us, gave the cousin the pamphlet. The cousin contacted me, and it was the same ending. She also committed her life to the Lord. She wanted a mentor. She got a mentor. And so 2 babies and 2 eternal lives were saved by handing an Uber driver leaving after dropping someone at the abortion center, but by handing him a pamphlet and telling them about the help that was available.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Again, a story that I wouldn't have known, which is why we do these podcasts. I would think, why bother? Why bother giving our information to someone who's already dropped the woman? It wasn't even a mom there to abort it. It was a worker.
Now,
So,
here's what I'll say: when in doubt, hand it out. Right?
yeah,
When in doubt, hand out a piece of literature. Now, we don't want
yeah,
to just be flinging literature all over the place. Everybody that walks by gets literature if we're on like a busy road or something like that. But when in doubt, hand it out. If there's an Uber driver that stops to take it, get literature into their hands. Maybe they did drop somebody off and they didn't know it. Maybe they weren't able to stop, or for whatever reason, they went in, still didn't realize it was an abortion clinic. They come out. I've had that situation happen before. I'll
hmm
still give them a piece of literature. I'll try to encourage them. Can you text that woman and get her to come out and talk to us? I'll try to encourage them to do
hmm
that. But if
yeah,
nothing else, I'll say, well, hang on to this literature, keep it in your car in case this happens again. You'll know where you're coming next time, right? And you can hand them this literature. So
yeah.
that literature is powerful.
It
It's seeds that we plant that keep on bringing an increase.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's the same Uber driver that will end up picking them up. Sometimes they've said come back in an hour or something like
Yeah,
that. So, and you never know. And then you've got a double chance to hopefully reach that woman.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
the next story is a little bit different. Again, one that I think the Holy Spirit prompted us to act, but that I probably wouldn't under normal circumstances have said anything to these workers. It was a paving company. It was
Yeah,
a paving company truck pulls in. There are a lot of potholes in the abortion center parking lot, but that didn't really register to me. At first, I thought it was a dad. We do see businesses pull in their business trucks, pull
yeah,
in with as the dad, sometimes meeting the mom. But in this case, so the name of the paving company is on the side, and as he's pulling in, I said, "Did you know this is an abortion center that you're pulling into?" And he said, "No," and he looked visibly shaken. He did
yeah,
not. Um, and I went into a very similar thing as what I've already told you that I say, where I described what happens there. And then I said, are you a believer? And he said, yes. And I said, well, what would God have you do? Meanwhile, the security people are going nuts.
oh yeah,
I've stopped a paver truck driver. And they're screaming at me, just he's here to do a job, idiot. Just leave him alone. Let him
right,
drive in. And I never listened to them. There were no other cars. They're not the cops. And I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't blocking anyone. The paver wasn't blocking any car from coming in or out. They're just mad that I'm stopping this person who they said he's got a contract. He's about to do business with this place.
yeah,
Just let the guy do his job. They're swearing at me, screaming at me, and I hand him our information and said, really think about what God would have you do. And they drive in. And so I think, okay. And I go back, I'm ready to start calling out, to the moms. And they did a K-turn in the parking lot and pulled right out. And as they're driving out, he held up the literature and pointed to the sky, to God,
yeah,
and left. They didn't come back. The paving company left. So we're all just cheering. Security is swearing.
yeah,
But that's not the end of that story either. That Saturday, and Daniel, I think you were the one that had this interaction, or one of the Saturday people. I heard about it. Again, I was there, but I wasn't right at the driveway, where another paving truck pulled
yeah,
in. So that Saturday, right? Was it you? Were
yeah,
you the
yeah.
one
It
that was
was.
there?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So same thing. They pull in. It sounds like it was the exact same scenario. Hey man, did you know this is an abortion center?
yeah.
And I don't know if they did or not,
No, they had
but
no clue.
and they had no clue. And they pull in and then did a U-turn and left
Yeah,
and
yeah. And
left.
as they were leaving, they said, "God bless you guys for what you're doing," and took off.
So, I mean, that story is so great to me because two paving truck companies that chose to glorify God rather than be paid their salary by the blood of babies. That was just such an encouragement
Yeah,
to me. shortly thereafter was the first 4-day weekend that I think I've ever known the abortion center to have. And maybe it was on the 4th of July weekend.
Yeah, it was.
So normally they take the 4th off, but if it falls on, a Friday or Saturday, but that's it. Maybe a second day, but it was a full 4-day weekend, which I had never seen. And the parking lot was paved in that period of time. So a paving company showed up. Apparently the the abortion center wised up that, hey, when there's a Christian witness out there, even the workers are affected by the choice to follow God, and we're going to have to do this under cover of night and cover of when they're not there.
Yeah, I want to reiterate the point I made earlier is that, these people quite likely don't know that it's an abortion clinic. And we got to be careful the way that we come across. We don't want to come across as like we're condemning them, we're lumping them in with the abortionist or the abortion clinic in a sense. We want to inform them. We want to expose Ephesians 5:11, right? Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. And really, we're exposing these people, these service people, whoever they might be, to the reality that's going on inside of that building. And before God, they have to make a choice. Now, I'll share a story real quick if my voice will allow. This is, man, I don't know, probably 10 years or more ago. I was out there on a Saturday. This is when I was volunteering on the sidewalk at that time. And I noticed that people started flooding out of the building, out of the abortion clinic on Latrobe. And I'm like, okay, something's going on here. Something pretty significant. And this is great because people are getting in their cars and they're leaving and all of that. Come to find out, a squirrel had somehow got on the transformer or something like that and kind of made the two contacts connect, and the squirrel got fried, but the power went out. Yeah. So the power was out at the abortion clinic. And so they couldn't do abortions.
Wow.
This is a Saturday. At that time, sometimes there would be 50, 60, sometimes 70 people there for an abortion. It was a slaughterhouse, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And there'd be people parking out on the streets and because the parking lot was so full there for an abortion. So I'm rejoicing. It was me and a small team that was out there. We were rejoicing that these babies are not going to die. And then the power company truck pulls in or pulling in to restore power. The guy stopped and talked with me, and I begged this guy. He didn't know it was an abortion clinic, but I begged this man, please, this is an abortion clinic. If you restore their power, they're going to begin killing babies again. Wow. This guy, now, and I was as gracious as I could possibly be. I'm not accusing him of anything. He didn't know, but I did plead with him. And this guy was not happy. So just be prepared that some people are not going to be happy. He's like, I'm just doing my job, which I'm like, I understand that, man. Yeah. I would hate to be in that situation. And we really have to understand from their perspective the situation that they're in. They do have a job to do. I get that. But at the end of the day, if that job is going to be restoring the power to a place that murders children, they've really got to, before God, make a decision. And I believe the right thing. I mean, I think anyone looking at this scenario, the right thing, this guy was saying, well, somebody's got to restore the power to this place. I'm like, yeah, of course, somebody has to, but it ain't got to be you, right? Let somebody else do it. If you trust in the Lord, trust in him. And again, I'm trying to put myself in that scenario. I would hate to be in that situation. Could you lose your job? Certainly, yeah. But again, babies are dying. And so I think we have to balance. We have to be gracious about this, right? We have to not just kind of disconnect ourselves from the situation. We have to realize that we could be in that same situation. And maybe some of you guys that are volunteering on the sidewalk, maybe you're an Uber driver. Some people do that on the side. You might be put in this situation. To imagine this is going to be an easy decision when your life and your livelihood depends on it is likely not true for many of these people. It's their only livelihood. So we have to meet them with that in mind, and we have to address them with humility. But again, at the end of the day, inside of that building, they are killing children, babies. Yeah. And these service people can do something to affect that. in some way. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, that's a good story. I've never heard that one. There was one that happened recently. Well, I guess about a year ago in New York City, and again, it was only related to me, so I'm not sure if I have the story totally correctly, but it's similar to what you just said. It was an Uber driver who had become a new believer, and he was going to church with one of our missionaries, and he happened to be delivering food. Maybe he was a DoorDash driver, but
Yeah, I think
he
it was DoorDash.
was a DoorDash driver, and so he was delivering food. Actually, not at the Planned Parenthood in New York City, but nearby. And he saw all those missionaries on the sidewalk and pulled over. He said, "Hey, what's happening here?" And they explained what was happening here. And he delivered the food, and then he went to one of the moms, and he's a new believer. He was on fire for the Lord with the zeal, all the zeal of, remember when you were a new believer, and he talked her out of killing the baby. And that baby was saved because a DoorDash driver decided he was going to find out what was going on. The missionaries were more than happy to tell him what was going on. The baby was saved. And he was so moved by what God had done that he now volunteers with them. He started volunteering with them, and apparently he's still with them. He's still volunteering and very effective. So again, you never know. This might be your future volunteer pool. The people that pull in. So one of my favorite stories, I think it's our last story, was an interpreter. And this was poignant in the same way as you were illustrating, Daniel, as you were saying, be gracious for some of these people. This is really, it is their livelihood. And this paycheck could mean the difference between feeding their family or not. And to try and be cognizant of that, I tend to forget that because my focus is more on the baby, but I think it is such an important thing to remember. But in this case, this interpreter came, she was dropped by her husband, and they were both, you could tell, as the husband dropped her, he hugged her, he kissed her, you could tell there was anguish in this couple. And I thought she was a mom coming to aboard, and so started calling out in that way. And she said, no, she doesn't believe in abortion. And I said, well, what are you doing here then? And she said, well, I work as an interpreter, and I've been called to interpret for a mom who doesn't speak English, who's here to kill her baby. And I begged her, don't. If you don't interpret that baby, the mom won't be able to go through with it because she won't be able to understand, and just drive away. And she had a discussion with the husband, but she said, look, I'm sorry. This is it. My husband can't work. He's disabled. This is my job. I can't risk losing this job or getting a bad write-up or whatever. And so I said, look, at least can you try and sneak her the literature? Here's what we do. I explained to her what we do, and told her about, because the information was not in this woman's language. It was an unusual language. And I won't tell you because I don't want to get this interpreter in trouble. But she did take it. She hid it under her shirt as we recommended, and she went in. And she was in there a good couple of hours. So we're, of course, sad. Yeah. We thought she probably did her best. And then we see her coming out. And she came right over to us. And she said, the mom is coming out. And I said, did she kill her baby? And she said, no. During the whole time that the interpreter was interpreting, she was not interpreting what the abortion center was telling her to interpret. She knew none of them understood what she was saying. And she was telling the woman about us, about everything we could do, about God, about that baby, the humanity of that baby, and that she should never kill her child. And she said, the woman's coming out, and I want to interpret for you all for free on the mobile ultrasound unit. So the woman did come out. She came right over to us. The interpreter brought her on with me and whoever else, the nurse and all, onto the mobile ultrasound unit. The woman chose life, was so grateful. She was in the country, didn't know anyone. I mean, I got it. I
Yeah.
understood the fear that had overwhelmed this woman. But with all the things that we offered her, I believe that might have been before the days of the mentorship program and Love Life. But Cheryl Chandler of Truth and Mercy Pro-Life Ministries definitely offered her a baby shower. I called Cheryl from the RV, and Cheryl said she would love to do the baby shower for this young couple. And we did. It was I remember still that baby shower because they were so poor, but they had this lavish meal prepared. I knew they couldn't have afforded it, but it was like just an amazing meal, which never happens. I mean,
Yeah.
we usually take them out to the meal, but they were so grateful. That little boy is now, I think, 6, and every few months I get a picture with this woman in her broken English thanking us
Yeah.
for having been there, along with, it's a group email to me, Cheryl, and the interpreter.
Yeah.
And she has
Amazing.
remained friends with that interpreter, as have we.
Yeah.
And years and years later, she is still thanking us and saying how this young boy is just the light of her life.
Yeah.
So, use the interpreters.
Yeah.
The
bottom line
abortion
is,
center
like,
doesn't know.
Yeah, with all of these people, whatever capacity they're there, God can use anything. God can use anything. We don't want to be distracted. Like you started out, we don't want to let these people be our focus, right? The mom's going in and is our focus, but kind of like that analogy that we laid out, that we're like a lawyer on behalf of that baby, right? We're pleading that baby's case. Proverbs 31 verses 8 and 9. We're making a case for those who are unjustly scheduled to die. And we're appealing to the judge, which is the mother, but we're also bringing witnesses, right? And sometimes those witnesses are the dads. Sometimes they're the friend that brought her friend there for an abortion. Sometimes they're the Uber driver. Sometimes they're the DoorDash driver. Sometimes they're, these other service people that are there unknowingly or whatever. And sometimes they can be called, with the analogy, kind of in line with the analogy, as witnesses that this baby does not deserve death, but deserves to live. And in this situation with the interpreter, she was certainly a witness in that baby's case that that baby deserves to live. And praise God for just the fruit that was born out of that situation.
Really. And that was a story that we were not able to share for years because we didn't, it's so far removed now, they'd never be able to figure out who it was if they even wanted to at this point. But for years, we were not able to share that story, which is true of so many of these miraculous stories. We don't share them on purpose. We don't want to get, especially these service workers, in trouble when they have worked so hard to fight for that child's life. So it's such a delight to be able to tell that story a little bit because it is one of the most miraculous things that I have seen happen out there. This is a woman who knew she had to go in, but she was still not going to deny her God.
Yeah.
And fought for that baby's life successfully.
Yeah. Why don't you read that scripture that you have kind of at the end of this article that you wrote? Like you guys know, Vicki wrote an article that's kind of the framework for this podcast episode. Read that scripture, maybe expound on it a little bit, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, so it's Isaiah 41, verses 10 through 13. And I will tell you what stops me, and maybe it's what stops a lot of us from speaking to the workers, the service people that are coming in, is fear.
Yeah.
I'm afraid they're gonna be mad. It is their job. And I do feel some, there's some kind of some angst about that. Should I really be stopping someone who is putting food on the table? I mean, they're not doing the abortion. Anyway, so I don't want to talk oftentimes to these service workers. And I think the point of this podcast is to say, don't ever let fear stop you from doing what God has called you to do. And I think quite often he has called us to speak to those service workers. So that verse, Isaiah 41, verse 10 to 13, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Behold, all those who are angered at you will be shamed and dishonored. I can't help but think of those security men screaming and swearing. Those who contend with you will be as nothing, and will perish. You will seek those who quarrel with you, but will not find them. Those who war with you will be as nothing and non-existent. For I am the Lord your God, who upholds you with my righteous right hand, who says to you, do not fear. I will help you. And bottom line, he always does. He always helps us. It may not be the way you expect. Don't get me wrong. Babies will still die. Service workers will still drive in. But when you take a bold step for God, invariably miracles happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, guys, I mean, all through the scripture, be bold and courageous. You guys, the Bible says the righteous are as bold as a lion. You guys that are serving on the sidewalk, I believe you're the righteous that are as bold as a lion, not a righteousness that you've come up with yourself. It's a righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ. But your obedience is stepping into righteousness and being a righteous person. And listen, you guys can be as bold as a lion. We don't need to be timid. We don't need to feel like we're inconveniencing people. Listen, remember, babies are dying, and God has called you to this mission. So be bold, speak to these service people, do it graciously. A bold, gracious conversation with them can go a long way. And God's going to use you guys. God is using you guys. So with that, we're going to wrap this episode up. As always, we encourage you guys to reach out to us. You can reach out to me, Daniel, at lovelife.org. You can reach out to her, Vicky, at lovelife.org. Again, I apologize for my voice. I got some allergy stuff going on, but hopefully this episode was a blessing to you. And we look forward to doing future episodes for you guys. So reach out, let us know what are some subjects we can cover. But until next time, God bless.
God bless y'all.
Give me an outlet for love. Give me an outlet for gratitude. I know it will cost me my life, but nothing's too precious since I met you.